So Sid, you're responsible for the renovation of the Bishop Street stand. Could you start by giving us an overview as to where we're at?
Well, where we're at, we're now playing catch up on all the problems that we've found. And certainly when I first volunteered to do this, and why they offered me a directorship, was I felt that it was in my capability because we're structural fabricators. And to me, it was just a simple case of cleaning it up, putting the terrace in at the back, which had been taken down because of the wood, okay? And then you find it's a complete can of worms. So the amount of work that's had to be taken place has got nothing to do with what I normally do, so I've had to bring other skills in. And basically the first thing we did was we had to do some trial holes to find the condition of the ground that we're building on. Then from that, the foundations are designed to suit that and what's happening at the moment. When we go over, you'll see, and I'm glad we're bringing the camera in for people to see where we're up to. We're currently piling, which is drilling holes into the existing ground, pressuring it with grout, which when it goes off gives the key to the foundations, which start to go in hopefully in about 10 days time.
So as we look at it now, Sid, will there be an extension to what we can see?
Yes.
When it is done, and where will that be to, so our viewers can visualise it?
Well, it's from where it is to about where it says stitch up. Then when that's done, we'll be looking at producing steel staircases at either end to provide a pod that sits on top of this structure, but not supported by that structure, supported by its own steels, because that's quite complicated.
We've spoken previously about a 3-phase plan. Could you take us through that?
Well, that's driven by the conditions that we found ourselves in. It became very clear that to do everything in one go was going to be just too difficult, too much to ask. So that's why we agreed to do it in the 3 phases. Phase 1 being the total refurbishment of the existing stand as we see it. That included the replacement of the wooden supports to the terracing, because the terracing will continue back to the back of the stand. Then phase 2, which is going to be easier because we'll be able to get at it, is doing the same groundworks, but now we can get at it rather than under it and extend the stand as we see it, the distance that I said, I think it's 3 bays. And then the final phase will be the construction of 2 staircases, proper staircases, one at either end. One will have a lift to provide a walkway above this structure, but not supported by this structure. It will have its own support structure. This stand will take no more loading.
And what are the likely time frames for each phase?
Well, I had hoped and said so for a long time that I would have hoped for October, November. That soon went out of the window as we overcome the problems. It'll be before the end of the season. I'd still like to think on behalf of the fans and the club that it's by Christmas, but let's not make ourselves any tasks worse than what they already are. The next phase then, we won't start until the close season. Probably halfway through the second season you'd have phase 2. Phase 3 you're talking another year.
And capacity for each phase, do we know what that would be?
No, because of course, to some extent, I don't like to talk numbers because it's still got to be approved by SAG. SAG might make me reduce numbers. If they feel that we've got any line of sight issues, they might still allow us to use it, but we'd have to cordon it off and that affects the numbers. But I would think when we're done 1400. But you see, the thing is, if we really need numbers, the proper thing to do is fill the corners. That's what we'll do. The thing above here is more about corporate and television.
Not to get ahead of ourselves, but is it a possibility to fill the corners in?
Yes, that's actually easier to do. Would have been easier to do the 2 corners as we look across. But then when you're looking across at a derelict building, it's not good vision, is it? So it was all right covering it with hoarding, it still was what it was. It needs to be made to look fit for purpose, which is all we can do, and clean.
Are there any designs available yet that supporters can view?
No.
When are they likely to be available?
Well, there's not been top priority for me, but we're coming close now to being able to do that, because basically all you're doing is showing the original stand. So, you know, I've never been really big on doing an artist's impression of a stand which already exists and is what it is. It'll just look cleaner and newer because it'll have new sheeting and be repainted. That's all it's going to be.
So we're pretty much level with the goal line here, aren't
Yes.
we? On the Bishop Street side of the stadium. What's been taking place here?
Well, the first thing we had to do, because people won't remember now it's gone, but what was here was a big bank with some fairly big trees on it. And that took a lot of getting out because we had some huge stumps and that had to come out first. And if you take a shot here, you'll see what I'm talking about. This bank was as high as the stand before. Okay, so that's come out to allow us to get side entry underneath the stand. We could do nothing from the front because of the pitch. We could do nothing from above because you'd need craneage. So everything that we're doing has to be from the end, a bit like a drift mine. And that has been a real problem, but that's what you've got to do. We can't come in any other way than underneath.
Well, the footprint isn't actually that big, is it? I mean, I would imagine you would have liked to have gone further back, but as our viewers can see now, it's just a drop.
Well, it's just a drop, but I'm glad you pointed that out. The problem is we have no width left. So even if the stand was taken down, which was an option at the beginning to enable us to build something grander, you couldn't have built anything grander because you've got no width. Okay? Nowhere near the width of these cantilever type stadium, which is what you would normally have. So what we've got is what we've got, quite a narrow width. And I'm pleased you point that out. And as you look up now, you can see on what it was embedded. You've got dry stone walling, you've got cinder ash foundations, none of which will support what we're trying to do. Many people don't understand just how close we are to the adjoining properties. And it's a fact of life, and it's something that we have to work with, contend, satisfy them and all the other parties involved that what we're doing is safe. It's another problem.
What will be kept here in terms of structure?
Only what you see, which is the steel, which is really only supporting the roof. What we're going to be building here upwards is reinforced concrete, which will go up through to support. Forget these are just temporary to hold the stand in place. We're going above this. Okay, these have to be maintained. As we come through here, we have to take it off and put it back, because that's how precarious it could be. So we have to take great care with what we do, and that's what that provides us with. So I want you to try and imagine, if you have a sweep round now, you'll see all this dry stone walling. Obviously we can't build on dry stone walling, so we're not. We're concreting from here. Here's an example of a pile, which I was talking to you about. There's 24 of these had to go in to a depth of 4 meters, quite some depth. That's pumped with grout, it solidifies, and then on which we can then key concrete, okay? All the way through here, different levels, which we can look at as we go along. But the existing frame, we're going to shot blast it and repaint it. That's important from a visual point of view. The roof will be redone, so that looks new. We're lifting the board there to improve our viewing values, because at the moment, if you look out, particularly if you're the back, you'll be impeded by the hoarding. This has been difficult from the off, and my analogy with a drift mine is no better shown than here. We're on different levels. This is a high level, and we had to get that heavy machine, that's a piling machine by the way, up to that high ground, and to do that we had to put in special ramps to get it there, but that was easier than going down and back up and knocking down the old toilets. So again, this is thinking on our feet. Originally we were going to knock everything down just to get that machine there, so we rethought it. Yes, this has cost a few quid, but it's done, and once access has been gained, all this comes out, because all this is to provide access for that machine.
So what other challenges have you encountered?
Well, basically having to come in from that end and keep these in place and not disturb the frame, and the ground conditions that we came across, which have, as you've already noticed, we've already stoned that. That's been dug out, restoned and compacted, just to give us something to work on, because you have to have solid ground, which is why we had the trial holes done right at the beginning. We have to know and prove to ourselves and the interested parties that check our designs that we do found on firm ground. And you don't know that until you drill for it.
So Sid, what have we got down here?
Well, this is the area I was explaining to you before. This is where the toilets always used to be. It's a useful space. That's also Bishop Street through that door there. And this space is going to become available to us for toilets because we need it, because the toilets that were available for the quantity that were here is not good enough now for SAG. So we have to have toilets, I think it's for 30, and that's what we've got to create. What we had was toilets, I think, for 14. And there are two entrances. We just came down one, here's the other one. And to overcome the problem of a narrow width, we're going to have down one way and up the other. That way we can utilise a given space. These were the original toilets, obviously. It's all got to be knocked down, reconfigured, but at least we've got the space to do it. And above us is the slab that we were standing on. And again, if you sweep round, you'll see the acros that are supporting the roof, which is supporting that ramp to get that machine over there.
So this is where the terracing will be?
Yes, this is the terracing, and this is the terracing that was constructed at the time in the 30s, I'm led to believe. Now, when I first looked at this project, I assumed that terracing is terracing, but apparently under Green Guide, which is what the SAG used to approve, and rightly so, you have a situation where you have what you call a go and a rise, and that go and rise is now dictated in a book, and these dimensions do not match current guidelines. We are trying to establish that because this did exist as a stand, that perhaps we could have a little bit of help in overcoming this, because now this is going to be safe standing, okay, which means we've got a little bit more flexibility on the rise and go, but it's not been resolved yet, but it will have to be resolved. There's two ways of overcoming it. Either we've got the concrete over it, or I've got to form it in steel with Dermaplate sheeting, which I don't really want to do. I'd rather keep what we've got here. So that's where the old scaffolding went.
For the gantry, yeah.
For the gantry.
Yeah.
So obviously that's going to be put right when we completely re-roof it. And it's going to be repainted, as I've said before, shot blasted and repainted. I'm grateful for the chance of just showing people the work that's been going on for the last 2.5 months is far more than they could ever imagine sat over there.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, when we start doing the concrete, they won't notice anything until suddenly there's terracing back to here. But previously, the terracing was supported by the columns, which we can't do. Hence, we're going to support from underneath.
We've spoken about toilet facilities and things like that.
Yes.
What about kiosks and any additional extras?
Well, of course, that's also important because we have to be able to service the people that we're inviting in. And the area that we came in through, where all the machinery was, that was where a bank was. That's all being levelled, and that's where kiosks and things are going to go. Toilets, we'd already talked about, underground or under the stand. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 17 and I'm 70 something. And I don't think I've ever come across a set of queries and problems that we've had to face here. But that's because we're refurbishing something. If we were to have knocked it down, then the problems would have been dealt with in an entirely different way. But you'd be talking 2 years.
And I imagine the cost for that would have been quite a lot more, significantly.
Well, absolutely, and that was another belief of mine, that we should try and save what we've got, because there's a value in here which exists. If you knocked it down, you've now got no value. You've just got the site you sat on. And at the end of the day, Steve-O, it's not that wide. As you can see as we stand up here now, there's no real width, is there? When you compare it to all these other stands. We haven't got as much width there as we've got lower tier there. So at the end of the day, it's about the space that's available, and I think cleaning this up, presenting it well, making it safe, getting improved by all the various bodies is the best bet.
This is looking at the third phase now, but what will the corporate facilities be like? How will that look? Again, you've got a relatively short footprint on the top.
Oh, well, don't forget that most of these corporate boxes are only going to be about 12 foot deep in old money, 4 metres-ish by 3 metres. So what it would be it would actually make this look quite spectacular. That's the thing I'm really interested in. What we've got is functioning, but it's not really inspirational. But by the time we put the pod on the top, which would be an 8-9 metre section in the middle for the cameras, which is what they want. The new rule is they need 9 metres. Then either side of that would be pods, self-contained pods, access to which is a walkway and then into the pod. So to be fair, I only need from probably there to where we're standing now. That's the width we're going to be in. So you're quite right. We can't make the width below any wider, but we don't need to make that any wider because we're not looking to come the whole roof. What's the point? All you're trying to do is house a box for people to sit in and view.
In a nutshell, it's a real step forward this for the club, isn't it? Because it's been derelict for so long.
And it has, and it's been derelict for proper reasons, or it was closed for proper reasons. And I honestly feel that any time anybody's looked at it, and several chairmen have, I know, they've looked at it and there's just a shake of your head because it's not surmountable in their belief. And it's only because of my doggedness and the fact that I have contacts, I have engineers at my disposal, I have ground workers at my disposal, I can come up with the answers because no one trade could solve this.
How would you just sum up the whole project?
Challenging, but worthwhile.